You'll see it all over the websites. You'll see the cookies, you've accepted this or you've accepted that. In that privacy policy, there's a lot of companies that have third-party controllers and they have access to your data and they will resell that data on.
Adam Morgan is a 20-year veteran in auditing and quality management, is a chartered member of the Quality Institute.
As the founder of Gaia, he helps businesses achieve measurable growth through collaborative quality management.
Copyright law and trademark infringement, it's self-regulated, so it only gets picked up if the original people actually go and chase it.
Big businesses like Disney, for example, or Netflix, they probably have an entire team.
Yep, they are just dedicated to checking for copyright. There's kind of two documents that most people get confused: policies and procedures. A policy is a company's intention of what they want to do, and the procedures are really how they're going to carry out those objectives.
Man, hacking on the internet is crazy.
With AI, it's gotten 10 times worse.
100%.
Because hackers now use AI to do the hacking for them. There's a lot of rules that are starting to form around AI. Anything that is produced by AI is not subject to copyright or trademark law because no one has specifically made it. AI is not a person.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Pod Files. I'm really excited to bring you a new guest. We're going to talk about a subject that probably for some of you may seem quite heavy and quite difficult, but I have the perfect guy to get into this subject and to get into policy, systems, law, things like that that are really important when you put content out there, when you work with other people, right? We need to respect quite a few regulations, especially in the UK, which is very regulated on quite a few industries. I have here Adam Morgan, who is originally from Wales. He lives here in Hamilton, not very far away from me. And we met at a networking event, and I decided to bring him on the show because he has a lot of knowledge on the topic. He has 20 years of experience in the professional industry, switched quite a few positions in quite a few companies, and we're gonna talk about loads of things that are really important. So welcome Adam to the show. How's it going?
Great. Yeah, thanks Bogdan. It's much appreciated for the invite. It's been really good. Hoping to be of use for everyone that's listening.
Yeah, of course. We're going to get through many questions. But first thing first, tell us a little bit more about you, what you're doing, what is your profession exactly?
So I work in the quality industry for the most part. I write policies, procedures, and ensure companies are compliant with UK industry and UK legislation. What that generally means for a lot of companies, small to medium-sized ones, is they can't afford a full-time person like myself, so they need to take that on in-house themselves, which is difficult because you don't know what you don't know. And that's kind of where I come in. I come in and I help from my experience and my company's experience is we come in and we help identify problems, risks, and come up with the solutions of known practices for them that would work within their industry.
Maybe you could describe a little bit what a policy is exactly, and then also why are they important in any business?
Yeah, so there's kind of two documents that most people get confused: policies and procedures. Most people will get those two confused because a policy is a company's intention of what they want to do. Their aims, their objectives, and the procedures are really how they're going to carry out those objectives. So you kind of have these two documents, and most companies will get those two confused, and they will put their objectives in their procedures.
It's very common to happen,
it's
right?
It's very common to happen, and most of the time I'll go and look at a procedure, and it won't actually outline what it needs to outline. It'll tell me the process that they're going to go through, but it won't actually say, oh, here's our intentions to deal with health and safety, or here's our intentions of how we want to run a nice quality business and how we're going to set our standards. So some of those documents are really important. Health and safety policy in the UK, if you've got more than 5 people that work for you, absolute industry requirement. It's a nice to have, it's an industry requirement. So if you employ more than 5 people or you have more than 5 subcontractors that work for you, you must have a health and safety document, and that's your policy. Another one that is a really good document to have would be a business scope. That kind of sets the goals of your business. For podcasters, identifies, what kind of show you want to run, what kind of audience you want to reach.
So what's the difference between a business scope and a business strategy? Are they the same thing? Or
They are sort of the same thing. The strategy more talks to how you're going to reach those targets and how you're going to achieve that scope. Your scope actually outlines, what your business is about. It's more of, these are what we have. This is, so for myself, my business scope is, I'm wanting to work with small to medium businesses. I'm wanting to educate them on what industry compliance is within their industry. And then I want to make sure that all my staff are fully trained to offer that expert advice. So that's kind of some of the scope of my business. And that's what a lot of companies don't really sit down and think about. Most people know what they can do. They're experts in their field. Like yourself, you're an expert in podcasting and that. But if you were to sit down and actually identify what your business is, it would be something that a lot of people find quite difficult to do. It's something that is done if you're able to sit down and someone asks you the questions of, have you considered, who you're, like for yourself, who's your audience, what kind of show you want to deliver, what are your goals for that show,
how to monetize it, how to get money out of it. So all these different aspects, I think they're very important for any business. I remember when I started my business, literally I started with a website. I put the website up, bought the domain, and literally started going and finding clients. And obviously you can start doing that, but as you grow your business, you should implement those strategies, those documents into your business to make sure that you don't fail. First thing first, you also are in the same line with what the law says, but also at the same time, these documents that are more for internal purposes, they really set the scene for your business, and you can get an idea of what you need to do in order to hit those objectives. And you're not like one person in a dark room, not knowing where you want to aim. You have an aim. You know exactly what type of things that you need in your business to make that happen. And all those systems, those policies, all these things create a structure around your business. If you don't have those, the structure is not there.
Exactly. The structure is not there. And another good document to have would be a good quality policy. So you identify what your quality standards should be. Now, there is an industry standard in quality for the system itself, which is the ISO 9001 standard. But from that, you've got to set your own metrics of what is good quality. So, if you've got a policy in place, you can identify, what's level of quality you would be happy with for your show, for instance, how you ensure that you're going to deliver something that is, a good quality product. How you check that, how it gets reviewed, that kind of thing. That all goes in your policy to say, here's how we plan to deliver a nice quality service out the door to our clients.
This is really good because everybody in your organization will be aware of their policy, right?
Yep.
They'll know exactly what the expectations of the business are, and they will all deliver the same quality.
Yeah, they should. And that's one of the things that comes down to, you've got to make sure that it is communicated, good communication to all your staff to go, this is our quality policy, here's our objectives, here's our goals, here's our standard. This is our standard for putting a product out to the public. And if companies don't have those, you tend to find that there's a lot of, chopping and changing on how processes work, on how things are delivered. It's a good way, your quality policy is a good way to start the process of standardization in terms of making sure something is done right first time, or not necessarily first time, but before it goes out, it goes out only once and you don't have to recall a product.
Yeah. This could happen, for example, in the podcasting industry where, let's say, we post-produce an episode. I do have my quality standards for my team, maybe not structured in the most professional way, but they are there for my team to look at them and to make sure that they do everything right. And actually, episodes go through multiple hands. It's not just one person that is doing the job and then it goes out. Usually there's like a quality control the manager is doing on the episode to make sure everything is 100%. It is really important because obviously there's a 1 hour footage, right? You want to go through the entire thing and you need to do it once or twice to make sure that there's nothing in there that, and we're going to touch on these like defamation, anything that, shouldn't be touched on the podcast, stuff like that. In terms of quality, you want to make sure that the audio is good, the video is good, everything like looks crisp. So yeah, all these, it's relevant for the podcasting and the creative industry as well, not just for like the brick and mortar businesses or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. I've worked with various companies from healthcare training professionals through to construction industry and through to then data suppliers as well. And it's a standard all the way through is to have a good quality process, good quality policy that ensures the products they're delivering out to the public.
I would say that this is one of the first things you need to actually implement in your business, because without quality, your service is not delivered right.
Yeah, which can be, if you're employing multiple subcontractors and they don't work to your quality standards, it's your reputation that is on the line. It's not theirs, it's yours, because they may be delivering the service to you, but you're delivering the service out to the public, and it's the public that makes that judgment on it's you and it's your name in your company that is on the line for it. So it's an important document to have.
100%. So if you would need, I know there's like any business is different first thing first, but also you'll need quite a few documents to make sure that everything is covered. And this is an ongoing process, I would guess, for any business, because if you want to grow and you want to evolve, you're going to need to implement more and more policies and systems in your business. But if you would need to choose just 3 of them, what would be the most important ones in any business?
In any business, definitely your business scope, because that sets the scene for your business. Definitely your quality policy. And then depending on your size, I would then say you need a health and safety policy, just because that covers you for if people coming to and from your property or your studio or your business, it ensures their safety. If you're below the 5-person limit, it's still good to have that.
Yeah, just to make sure you protect yourself from any hazards, anything.
And those would be my top 3 ones to have. After that, I would probably then look into the agreements and contract side of things, policies around those ones, and policies around intellectual property, because believe it or not, that is one of the areas that is quite heavily misused. For instance, coming here, you actually were quite good. You've got a section that I've signed up to say that you can use the intellectual property that is displayed in this podcast for your show and for everything there. And it's not, you're not robbing me of anything, but it's not that I can then go, oh, well, it protects you.
This is something that I said, take it down. Or
exactly. I've signed up to it. I've agreed to that, and that's fine. So having those agreements in place are very good, and having policies around that is good to protect yourself for. And that relates to every service out there, because if you don't protect your intellectual property, you are liable to have it stolen.
Let's talk a little bit about the creative industry, podcasting. Let's focus on podcasting. there are quite a few areas there that you need to make sure that you have copyrighted. Make sure that you don't infringe anybody's trademark. You don't infringe anybody's copyrights to music, for example, even ideas, anything like that. You don't want to plagiarize other works. So let's discuss about it a little bit.
A little bit about that. So you kind of have two main ones there. So you have copyright law and you have trademark infringement.
Mm-hmm.
They are slightly different. They're not exactly the same. Copyright law, it's a simple one would be Disney.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Disney, they're a well-known, they have to protect their identity quite heavily. Everyone can sort of find a Disney image, and a lot of companies or a lot of shops, their t-shirt designers can pick those images up, and those that aren't knowing about it are in breach of copyright law unless they've specifically written to Disney to get their approval for use of their images.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people go, oh, but if I change the image enough or I use it as an inspiration for my own image, it still comes under copyright infringement and copyright law, because even if you've used the image and changed it enough or changed it slightly, it's still not enough because you've used the original Disney image
to make it happen. One thing, I had a previous guest on the show, and he told me that his logo had a small Apple logo on the computer.
Yep.
So the logo is like one guy sitting in the front of the computer, and the computer had the Apple logo on it. Mm-hmm. And then he got a strike from Apple.
Yeah.
They said that they need to take this down because it's not.
Yeah. So again, that one would be he's not looked up. It's close to it.
Yeah.
It may not be exact, but it's so close that it's recognizable as the
Apple. You can't use that. And I've got another situation I've heard of from one of my clients. They used the name for their podcast. They came to me as a client already with the podcast running, so I couldn't change the name or anything like that or research on that at all, because they made that decision way before they got into my business. They've got their podcast struck by Disney. And you mentioned right before we started the show that Disney is very aggressive on that.
Yeah, they do protect, because copyright law and trademark infringement, it's a self-regulated. So it only gets picked up if the original people actually go and chase it,
yeah,
and raise the lawsuits.
So I would guess like these big businesses like Disney, for example, or Netflix, they probably have an entire team that check only for that.
They are just dedicated to checking for copyright. And it's when I say they check aggressively, Etsy shops have been shut down because they've been using Disney logos and the Mickey Mouse and the Minnie Mouse and that kind of thing to put onto t-shirts, and they come along and they go, you've not used us for it, you've not requested our agreements and the legal side, so they'll shut the shop down. And they do chase them down quite aggressively, but people still open them up, and they just go for the point of, oh well, it's self-regulated, so I'll maybe get 6 months out of it or a year out of it before they chase me down.
That happens quite a lot. However, for the content creators, right, it's a different thing, because obviously if you create a physical product, right, you can sell that, you made your money, that physical product disappear from your hands.
Yeah,
I mean, there's trace for it, of course, that you created that product. That's not the case. But for example, content creators, let's say I create a podcast and I put it up on Spotify, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all these places. And I can run this show for, let's say, half a year, 6 months. And I put so much effort into getting guests, produce it, pay a lot of money for production as well, making sure that it's great. I also get results. I get a return on investment on this. And then suddenly 6 months later, Disney comes along or Apple comes along and says, what's up with that logo? on your footage on your or
Yeah.
in your studio, that shouldn't be there because it's our logo, or you infringed our trademark or whatever. And then now you need to take everything down or re-edit it, which would be very difficult to blur something like that. You will destroy your entire work just because you haven't done enough research for your podcast name, for your business name. And my next question would be, how do people prepare? First thing first, how do people make sure that they don't infringe somebody? For example, I'm a musician myself, and I wanted to use the name Bratis, Bratis, which is my surname as my stage name. And I bought the domain for my name first. That's the first thing I did. But the second thing I did was obviously you should check first if the name is not used into a certain class, from what I know, because there's different classes on trademarks, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, let's say, a creative class. Let's say, I think it's 41 or something. Don't quote me on that, but there's like an entire guide on certain classes.
It's a very difficult thing to start to wrap
So
your
you
head
need to
around.
make sure that there's nobody in that space on the same class with your name that they already trading. And it doesn't matter if they haven't trademarked. From what I understood and what I read, it doesn't matter if they haven't trademarked their name. If they already started trading with that name, right? If you come along later on, you have less of a case.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It is. So even if you've come along and they've never they've never traded in that name, but they've bought the name or they've got a similar name, then you have less of a case to actually say, I'm trading under this name. They've never. It doesn't matter. They got there first. A prime example of this was my partner. She'd created a t-shirt. She no longer does it, but she created a t-shirt, and it was just a saying. It was, it was something that was close to us for geology. It was like geology rocks or something like that. And under that, someone had already purchased that trademark name, and on Etsy, it flagged on their software, and they went, nope, you've got to take that down.
Yeah. And
we looked at it, and it was, it was some person away down south, and that, and you go, oh, okay. I can that's on us. That's my bad. We didn't realize it. Should have checked it. But I didn't think a set of words together, 3 or 4 words together could be trademarked.
But people can trademark even slogans. And stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, Paris Hilton was one of the she trademarked 2 words together, and that was it. And it was one of her most famous sayings. And you just go, well, at what point does something not become trademarked? And anything can be trademarked. But your point that you've got to kind of look into is you've got to go and do a bit of the market research for it. There's websites
some
out.
Specific
places? There's some websites out there. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I've got a file at home that kind of I've saved them all down to. And they will tell you can go. There's registries that you can go and actually look.
Would you be fine putting those websites maybe down in the show notes for people to have a look?
Yeah, I can certainly dig them out. That's not a problem.
Yeah, good. Because it would be great. People may be curious to see if actually I'm infringing already somebody else's.
Yeah, that's some of the
and
things.
if that's the case, maybe they can come to you to see if there's a solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of those things that it's quite difficult for a lot of people to sort of identify, because it takes time. It takes time to research it, and
most people let's say small business owners, right? And podcasters, sometimes they may not have a huge team, so you may not have the time to look into all this stuff. So it's great to use somebody for that, somebody to at least do some sort of auditing, checking on your business to make sure that everything is good.
There's a lot of companies out there that are infringed on it, and it's down to the risk you want to run. And what your exposure is. Like coffee shops, some coffee shops out there that I've seen, there's quite a few that they take a twist on a name of something. That something there was one that was very similar to Top Gun. It was interesting to see how that one played out, because he wasn't. It wasn't until someone came in and took a picture of his coffee shop and the name that he got into trouble, because they pictured it, they put it on their social media, it went a bit viral because of the name of the shop, and at that point he then had to go and change the name of his shop.
And imagine the hassle. Let's say you already printed coffee cups with your logo on it, all the stuff that you put so much work into gets destroyed.
Yeah, and it's one of these things that you can't really see how things will play out. So yeah, it was a good name, but had he done a bit of market research, he would have understood that he would have been infringement on trademark. It wasn't copyright; it was trademark infringement, because it was
it's the logo, the name,
the logo and the name, and that was the thing. So he was in trademark infringement on that one, but it meant for a small business that it was a lot of money. He then had to go and re-register his business. He had to go and get his all new signs made up, and all his layout inside redone and that kind of thing. So it took away from the actual enjoyment of his
so many
work.
people forget about these aspects. They are get so excited about whatever projects they want to do, and then they forget about all these aspects. And if things go south, they go south.
Yeah. And it comes back to, and I'll always say it, is you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
A lot of people, they'll go, I know how to do my business, I know how to do my work, and they won't actually understand everything else that comes in with running a business.
Usually businesses get started with a technician. That's what I would call a technician. Somebody that is very good at something, right? It would not be necessarily like law or policies or anything like that. It could be marketing. It could be very good at filming, very good at making bread. I don't know, anything.
Yeah.
They have no idea about all these different things, and they run their business knowing all these things, and they make sure that the business is working great. But then all this stuff that is really like, floating around your business all the time, people tend to ignore it until actually something happens, and that's bad.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones out there that most companies don't deal with is GDPR. They don't touch on it. They don't look at it. A lot of them, they will go, oh yeah, no, I don't need to register. I don't need to. I don't store people's personal details. Prime example, I'll take yourself. You sent me my form today for coming in. It takes my name, it takes my address, it takes my signature, it takes, my phone number. All of these are classed as personal details. All of these require you to protect that information on my behalf now that you have it. So that is a regulation under GDPR Act 2018 in the UK. There's an EU one as well, but
so GDPR in the UK is different than the GDPR in Europe.
It's slightly different.
It has different.
In the EU, you have to state that you have a limitation on how long you store it, to say that we will store your information for what is a necessary requirement. And you can leave it at that statement, what is determined as a necessary requirement.
Right.
Whereas in the UK, you have to stipulate how long you are keeping that data.
Good.
So for instance, I've put out a few, I used to put out adverts, and I used to put out job interview CVs. And on those, a lot of them would say, we will keep your CV for so many months, 2 years, 24 months, 12 months or that, because they want to keep it to see if you are a better fit for another role, potentially.
Yeah.
They have to stipulate why they're keeping your data. And they also have to give you the option for not to record the data at all.
Yeah.
So there are a number of rights that have to be,
So where would
identified.
you add those rules, for example, for your business? Would this be public on your website, or where would you actually make sure that the person that is giving you the details has access to this?
So probably for yourself, if you're a digital, if you've got a digital presence on your website, a GDPR or a privacy policy is a really good thing to have.
But even though you have that, right?
Yeah.
People don't really read into that very often.
No.
And how would you make sure that they actually go into that, if that makes sense?
So this is where you've got to then give they have to actually accept what you've put down there. A lot of people, you'll see it all over the websites. You'll see the cookies, and you'll see, you've accepted this or you've accepted that, or, you have that option to say, here's our privacy policy, please check to say that you've read it. Now, most people do the wonderful thing of checking that box and never clicking the link. I always, as the profession I'm in, I always check that privacy policy, because
just to make sure that your data doesn't get
it doesn't get resold. Because in that privacy
there's many
policy,
businesses that do that.
Yeah, in that privacy policy, there's a lot of people, a lot of companies that have third-party controllers, and they have access to your data, and they will resell that data on.
And you don't know why you're getting spam all the time.
Exactly. And there's a lot of them that then they don't use that data in the most professional ways, and you have, under GDPR, as a data subject, you have certain rights. So you've got the rights to alteration and accuracy for the data that's held. You have the right to access that data and know what is data people hold on you. And you have the right to erasure, for them to actually completely delete you from their system. And it's one of the regulations that if, for instance, you send out a newsletter.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, because loads of podcasters have newsletters for marketing purposes.
So one of the things from that, you must, as someone that sends out that newsletter, have the option for them to unsubscribe from it.
Yeah.
You have to. It is a requirement under GDPR. So you have to have that for them to be able to go, I no longer want your newsletter. I want to be removed from your system. Please take me off the mailing list. You have to secure their data. That is one of the requirements as well. You have to make that data secure. So that is encryptions and separate servers and security and that kind of thing. Good firewalls, all that kind of thing. Now, there is a point at which you can put all that in place and you can still have your system hacked.
Yeah.
There is a point at that. Now, so long as you have done everything that is reasonably possible, and the second you have a data breach, you report it to the ICO.
Yeah.
You're not going to get subject to fines so long as you enact everything within the time limits.
So you did everything possible for that not to happen. And if you are transparent about it, that's kind of like the word, right?
Yeah.
You would not get fined for it.
Yeah.
And you try the best to protect the data.
Yeah.
Before we dive back into the episode, I want to give a quick shout out to SaaSpot. Not only are they the masterminds behind this podcast, but they also power dozens of other shows you know and love. SaaSpot offers a flexible pay-as-you-go podcast production service that grows with you. Whether you need help choosing the right equipment, booking guests, editing, or setting up your podcast, they've got you covered. The best part? The team at SaaSpot isn't just professional, they make the entire process fun and stress-free. If you've been sitting on a great podcast idea, now it's the time to bring it to life. Visit SaaSpot.com and use the code TPF2025 to get 20% off your first production package. That's TPF2025 for 20% off. All right, let's get back into the episode. Yeah, because, man, hacking on the internet is crazy.
Crazy. And to be honest, you
thought that this era is gone.
You would, but it's gotten 10 times worse. With AI, it's gotten 10 times worse.
100%.
Because hackers now use AI to do the hacking for them, and it can run, and it has access to algorithms and scripting and everything that hackers used to have to do manually themselves. Now it's all processed through an AI.
So you can multiply that process, God knows how many times, and then you've got a breach in the system. And sometimes you may have, because we work in this digital world, right? You may have so many access points to all sorts of tools, all sorts of software. Imagine you've got, I don't know, let's say you use MailChimp for newsletters, right? There's one software that provides newsletters services for businesses. It's a big company, right?
Yep.
You may think that they will do everything in their power to protect their own servers and everything in order to protect you. You can't really enforce many things because you use their service. You sign some terms and conditions with them as well.
Yeah.
And you've got that, and then you've got a million other tools. Now, it takes just one, right, to be breached.
Yeah.
And you may get even more breaches after that, especially if you use the same password on everything. And that's a big no-no, third-party authentication. Have these things in place where people can't really get into your stuff very easily. So do all that, and then don't ignore it, because if you ignore it one time, for sure it's going to happen. It happened to me with some personal stuff where I got hacked into an account that I ignored for, I don't know, years.
Yeah.
And then at some point I just got a notification. It was my Skype account. A notification, and who uses Skype anymore? A notification. You remember we used to say you Skype me.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't. Yeah. We say now let's Zoom.
Let's Zoom or let's Teams. Or...
Yeah. So and this hacker was somewhere from Asia. I think it's from China. I don't want to say there's more hackers in China or in another country, because there's hackers everywhere. But this particular one was from China, got into my Skype account. They stole my account. They fed the account with my with credits from my card, right? So my card, I saw 100 transactions, £40, £40 would go into my account, and they would use this account to scam other people.
Yeah.
Right? And then first thing I did was contact Microsoft and told them that, look, I got hacked, do something about it. It was incredibly difficult to first thing first make them act on it, because they thought that I'm lying. They thought that I'm the scammer. They thought that I'm the guy that is not owning the account, even though I gave them enough proof and stuff like that. And it was very slow as well. I called them, it would not pick up. So this amount of time, this guy was making all sorts of things with my account. And in the end, what I was able to do is deactivate my payment on that account, but I was not able to erase the account. They would not erase it.
Yeah. I mean, a prime example actually happened to me recently of a scammer trying to come in and using Microsoft, using it an American number, trying to contact me, saying they're a Microsoft support raising, for a ticket raised.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, hang on a second. A, I've only just set up my account, and B, I have not raised any tickets. So
why is there a ticket?
Yeah. So why is there a ticket? This is a scam.
Yeah.
So yeah, always, my thing on that one is always be cautious. But GDPR policies are one of the things to help protect your company and protect yourself, because they set up the guidelines of what information you're going to collect, why you're going to collect it, and how long you're going to hold it for. And then you set out the rights for your clientele.
A lot of people think about also that, let's say, they collect emails, they collect names, but many times, many businesses, they even collect just visitors, right? So for example, I've got a tracking on my website, let's say an analytics tool, Google Analytics, right? And I want to see who's coming.
IP addresses.
You've got IP addresses, you've got geolocation.
Yeah.
Maybe not down to the street, but you know where that person is coming from the area at least. Browsers, from which place they got into your website, from which like website.
Yep.
So where the traffic is coming from. So you've got loads of details, and if you triangulate all this stuff, maybe you can find out who that person is. And even though you don't collect anything, right, per se in terms of emails, for example, because people will think like, oh, it's just if I have a sign-in feature on my website, or if people go and opt in for a newsletter, that's the only time when I need that. But it's not. If you have any type of tracking mechanism on your website, that will be kind of like another issue.
Yeah. So this is where your terms and conditions on your website come in, and that's it frustrates me in terms of everyone puts it, because there's so much detail down there in terms and condition. Everyone puts it in very small print to fit it on the page, and it frustrates me. But I do it on my page. My page is a little bit bigger, but
sometimes clients or like visitors, they can be put off because of that. Because many people, like, they try to get people sign up to anything as fast as possible. People have no freaking patience nowadays.
No, they don't,
and that's a problem. And they don't go through the terms and conditions or anything like that. Because what would happen normally? Let's say somebody will come. Let's say I'm a brick and mortar business, right? They come at my brick and mortar business. First thing first, you'll sign up some forms, probably some sort of like onboarding process to make sure that
there'll be like a toolbox talk. There'll be a health and safety induction, and they'll say, you're coming onto this site. You can't come onto this site unless you've got the correct PPE, this, that, and the other. Yeah, and that's what
online. That doesn't happen like that.
No,
most of the time. So just a prime example. I went to a spa place here in Hamilton, and they got me some forms, right? They gave me some forms, and it wasn't a lot of read, but I actually went through the entire thing, if I'm at it, just to make sure that I'm not breaking any rules, making sure that everything there is like safe and whatever. And it was something that happened physically. I got papers to read. But now you have like a small link in there before you opt in. You need to check it. Many people just check it. They go into the website and they forget about it. Yeah. And it's as equally as important.
Yeah, it is. And because it is one of the major risks. And unless you click on it and know what you're clicking on, you don't really know what you're signing up to in those privacy policies. A lot of companies, as we've already said, a lot of those companies will resell that data on, and you've just clicked it and said, yeah, that's fine, without fully reading it. Now, a lot of them don't.
What if, for example, you don't want to get your data sold and you still want to use that service? Would be an option there? I don't think so.
A lot of them don't put that option in. Now, they should. A lot of them, because you should be able to opt out whether they resell your data.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where a lot of the cookies come in these days, where I will always go, no, I'm not going to confirm the choice, because their main choice is select everything's turned on.
Right.
So
that's also something that people do wrong. They don't make the policy or the conditions in such a way that you could opt out from certain things if you don't want to.
Yeah,
so that is not.
You should really make it in a way that there's purely the analytics that are captured. There's the marketing. Then, so they might resell your data on to marketers that will then spam you and put you on a mailing list, or it'll start tracking that marketing into your feeds then, because they've sold your IP address. That allows them to start putting targeted marketing into your feeds, and these kinds of things. So there is that side of things that a lot of companies or a lot of people aren't aware of when they do it, and that then moves into, if you're talking marketing, then that then moves into your CPA or your CAP style of marketing. And if you're taking marketing on, you've got to make sure, again, it's another area within legislation that is self-regulated.
Let's talk about the CAP codes. I never heard of this until you told me about that. But tell me exactly what that is.
So the CAP codes, they actually are a set of rules. It's a bit of government legislation. It's another part that's self-regulated at the moment. Ofgem and that will come and look at it, and they will check that you're being ethically compliant with the code itself. It was primarily set up for advertisement on TV, but then it's moved from that to then being in digital marketing, online marketing, and it is all to do with advertisement to make sure you're not advertising something that isn't there and isn't true.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Making sure that you're not advertising something that is going to be detrimental. So something, like you're not endorsing slavery, you're picking a project that's been known in child slavery or something like that. As long as you're not picking up on something like that, and that you are actually not just taking the code of the law, of the letter of the code, and actually putting that into place, but you're also taking the ethos behind it and implementing that. You
don't want to have businesses trick you, basically.
Yeah.
So the adverts, they don't need to be created in such a way that they trick you into a service or anything like that.
Exactly.
Because that actually happened to me one time from a company, I will not name it, where I opted into that service. And it was a free service, right? There was nothing for me to pay. It was a trial. Right? It was a trial as long as I would keep my it was one of these tools where you put on your website where you could have there's a pop-up coming up if you want to exit the website, right? And it asks you, like, do you want to sign up to this newsletter if you're still interested into this? And then hopefully they would opt into your pop-up, into your newsletter, and then still get the content and maybe reach out to them to sell more services to them. And was this tool, and then this pop-up would have a counting on it, like the amount of times it will appear until you will start paying for this, right?
Okay.
And I remember clearly that they said, when I signed up to this tool, they said something like, we're going to collect your card, right? We're going to collect your debit card. We're not going to bill you without your consent. And we are, if your pop-up reaches the amount of times it gets shown on the website, it will just stop, right? We're not gonna charge you in order to show this pop-up more. It's gonna be just it's gonna show up like a few times and then it will disappear. You're not gonna get the benefit of the service anymore, basically.
Yeah.
And then 1 year, 2 years passed, and then at some point they changed something in their terms of service, something changed in their website, and then I got, at some point while I was doing my bookkeeping, I saw a transaction of like £200 for this tool, which I never used, and I didn't notice that this money disappeared from my account, and it was like a few months later.
Yeah.
And then I said, the heck, I didn't subscribe to this. I never wanted this company to get my money for this tool. I thought that it's completely free and there's nothing like that. And I went on Trustpilot to see what other people talk, and then more people have this problem, and this is a US company. And what I did, first thing first, I tried amicably to get them like return my money. They didn't want to give me my money back. And then I told them, look, if you don't do that, I'm just going to start a small claim for you guys, because you tricked me into signing to this service, thinking that I'm just going to give you the debit cards and everything just in case I want to buy the software later on. And you automatically debited my card without my consent. And you also didn't send me an invoice for it, because what happened, in their website, there was a section where I could fill in the invoice after I got charged. And that's weird, because an invoice needs to be sent before I'm charged in order for me to pay.
Approve the payment.
That's a receipt if you give it to me after it's charged. I said, why should I make myself an invoice on your website? That's so stupid. So what I did, the first thing I did, I tried to solve it with them. They didn't. I told them, look, I'm just going to small claim this. In the UK, we've got this system where we could like ask for a small claim. If you don't present yourself to the court, right, then I'll have I'll gain basically the case because you haven't. So I sent an official letter. I found the CEO's details of the company, and I put the CEO in the CC as well as the manager that was taking care of my account. And then the first thing they did, they said, okay, yeah, we're going to refund your money. It's fine. They were afraid of not going through the hassle. And if you have the law at your hand and make sure that you do, like, you know your rights as a consumer, you can get away from this stuff. But you see, companies, and it was a big company.
Yeah.
Which was weird, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's sometimes what happens is they work off the fact that they are big companies, so it kind of gives them a little bit more clout for the smaller companies to find it difficult to to do anything. But if you know your legislation, if you know what is allowed and what should be allowed, then you're better armed for those kinds of confrontations. And I think if you've got those processes in place and those policies and that documentation and evidence of everything, keep good, clean documented evidence, that helps in many situations, not just when something goes wrong, but equally when something goes right, because you might want to take, for instance, if you have a really successful show, you might want to take that as a model for doing a different kind of show.
Yeah.
And if you know how you did it and you've got the processes and everything in sequence, you can take that model up, you can move it on to the next show.
Because you never know what your thinking process was 2 years ago, right?
Exactly.
So I document quite a lot of things, and some people look at me like I'm crazy, like, why do you write all this stuff, right? Because I do my own stuff, like in terms of policies and whatever, not like systems. I would call them like the SOPs. I do these myself. Like, what's more that deals with the legal stuff, I would most likely hire somebody that is specializing very well into that, because that's touching the law already. But the SOPs, for example, for my business, I'm modeling those myself from what I know, and I do that. I DIY it to save a little bit of cost in the business. I find it very useful when I create a process that may not look very useful now, right? Because you see, like, whatever, like, I do this once, but then you use this process later on, 3 months later, and maybe you don't know when that's going to be really, really good for your business. Just a small thing, like how you hire people in your business, right?
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have a process in place there, every time you hire somebody, it's going to be a hassle on how you do it. You're going to be inconsistent. You're not going to create a good image of your company in the front of the person that you're hiring. And you're just going to have loads of headaches. When you have a system in place, that's already set for your business, and you know that you do this way every time. And it's scalable as well, because you can then pass it to somebody else to do it.
Exactly. Well, like under the ISO standard of 9001, one of the criteria within that for a quality system is, do you have a process for hiring? Because that sets, if you have a process for hiring, it sets out, how you identify the qualifications of people, how you identify that what need you have within the business for this person. So it sets out a whole list of rules and regulations your company should set up for just hiring one person. And you would think, oh, well, that's only a small part of just, I'm gonna go and meet this person. And the problem you have if you don't have a specific system set up for it is, depending on how you feel that day, you will have an unconscious bias.
Exactly.
A prime example of unconscious bias in that is, this is not my accent. When I was going for jobs out in the time, there was an advert out that was about adult learning, and there was a Welsh person on there, and it was, I learned to read, I did, was part of the advert.
Amazing.
And that had an unconscious bias on the general populace. I went to, I must have gone to about 10, 15, 20 interviews. And I had a fairly strong Welsh accent at the time. And what kind of happened was I went in to these interviews, and when I asked for feedback, they couldn't really say what was wrong. They just
Yeah, they
had
didn't
this
want to, like,
feeling
yeah.
that, I don't know, that we just didn't feel like you'd be the right fit. I got some elocution lessons, changed my accent, learned to speak properly, as it was. And the first interview I went to after that, I then got the job, no problem.
That's crazy.
It is crazy, because you think, well, surely we shouldn't be in a society where that is true.
It doesn't matter as long as you make yourself understood. It should.
Yeah, and that was one of the issues I kind of had, was this unconscious bias, and it's because back then there wasn't this process, this industry wasn't that established, and there wasn't these processes in place on how to identify quality in the staff you're hiring to remove that bias. And what it does is, having these processes in place, it allows you to take away that bias, and it allows you to set up, is this person the right fit, the right person for the job, based on skill sets, based on their performance, based on whatever it is that you've based that hiring requirement on, that you think it should be. So it doesn't matter if you've woken up from being out on a night out and got a sore head and like, oh, I don't really want to do this, or I don't, you can actually still objectively assess these person's skills.
Yeah, it's all about the skills and what it can bring to your business. It doesn't matter like all the other things, or just culture. Most of the companies, I would say, like, if they want to be successful nowadays, they need to be inclusive. They need to include any type of, like, we live in a world where globalization is what's happening all the time. So, for example, here in the UK, anywhere you go in the UK, you're going to see people from all across the globe, everywhere. You don't want to exclude anybody from coming to your business at the end of the day.
Yeah,
your audience, your customers to start with are very diverse.
Yeah.
So
that's it. I mean, I work with people across the globe. I've got mentees in Lithuania that listen, and I've trained in the quality industry, because the ISO standard is an internationally recognized standard. It's a global standard, and I've trained them in that. And they're it's that whole, you've got different cultures you've got to work with, you've got different people, and it brings diversity to your business that can be an asset. And a lot of companies don't always recognize that. But in today's society, where the world is a whole lot smaller because of the internet and digital media and everything, it's something that, if they want to survive, companies have to actually look at, moving forward with the times, as it were. In that.
So let's talk about defamation. We haven't touched on that. It's a quite tough subject.
Yeah, defamation is quite a tough subject, I can imagine. It can be also quite a daunting subject, because you've really got to look at what the subject matter you're going to present is. Defamation kind of has a main topic to it, in that the only way it can be a defamatory comment, defamation comment, is if it is untrue. So if you're presenting a comment on someone or someone's business that is untrue, it is classed as defamation. If it is true, if the information that is being held and there's evidence to back it up, it's not defamation. If it is found to be damaging to the reputation or of a person or business, that is and it is an untrue comment, that is defamation. That's the simplest possible term to put it down to. The consequences of defamation is it can see legal action, it's reputational
The thing is that
damage.
once you start it, sometimes you can't stop it.
That's the
Especially
other thing.
in this world, you say a comment about somebody that is not true. Let's say you didn't fact check anything,
Yeah.
and you say something, and then you could create a lot of problems for that business or person.
Yeah.
And changing the opinions of people. Like people go on TikTok, they watch reels and stuff like that, and they take that as the true. Most of the time, it happens in politics, it happens in businesses, it happens in everything.
Yeah. And I mean, you get two types of it. You get permanent defamation. So this is where you have a permanent place, so a blog post, a podcast, that kind of thing. And you have temporary, so like live streams, because they are up and down.
Yeah, they're not recorded per se.
Yeah. So,
but you don't know that.
Well, that's the thing. You don't know. You also don't know how many people are watching
Yeah,
and that kind of
somebody
thing.
can just record it on the phone. You never know.
Exactly. But those are kind of the two types of defamation that you get. And depending on those, so one's classed as slander, which is, the temporary one, because it can be a short-lived bit of defamation, and that depends. So your legal actions and on that one depend on, its permanency is really what it is, and it will all be subject to legislation. It's all subject to court costs and court fees and payouts and that kind of thing. So that in itself, defamation is one which is really, particularly for your industry in podcasting,
very important.
Is very important. And it's something that, you should have in your terms and conditions, you should have in your agreements with your clients, to basically say they're not coming on to use your podcast as a platform to defame a competitor or something like that.
Yep.
Because you're then partly liable because you've given them the platform.
The place, yeah.
So you need to be very clear in how you treat defamation from your guests. You shouldn't, we can talk about lots of companies out there. And we've talked about a few today, but we've not said anything that is untrue. We've not said anything that is slanderous to them. We have just said that, this is what kind of happens. This is the process that they use. So long as you are truthful in the statements you are providing, and you have done your due diligence of fact checking those claims before you put it out there, then most of the time you should be okay. The problem you have is when you have your guests and you
don't know what
they're going to say.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's where the post-production could come into place.
Yeah,
it's like one thing that we are doing as well in my business is making sure that if things start sound very harsh, let's say to a particular person or business, my team will remove it, or at least ask the client to decide if they want to keep it or not, and explain that this is like a potential defamation issue which could take place, and we advise the clients on that. If that, it's rare when that happens, but it could happen, especially on podcasts that are gossiping or things like that are more fun to listen to, but
because there's a few different types that can cause defamation. Heated topics, where people can be very passionate about that topic. They might say something off the cuff, and it can be classed as defamation. Bit of satire and humor can be, particularly in today's world, can be taken in a myriad of directions and misunderstanding, and those humor, while it can lighten a subject, my subject is very dry. It is quality and project management and auditing.
That's why we've got coffee and tea.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we've got coffee and tea to keep us awake. It can be a very dry subject.
I'm sure the people find it very interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. But from that side of things, yeah, you can lighten it with humor, but you never know how your audience is going to react to that. Some people can be offended at humor. Some people can be, I find comics jobs are, something that is, I don't know if I could do it.
Bit of a gray area or something.
Because they will say something and it can get them into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Because some people in the audience didn't like how it's
and
been delivered.
I've seen some guys, I don't remember from the top of my head the name of this comedian, but he is literally on stage and he's making fun of everybody in the audience, right? And specific persons, they ask the names as well.
Mm-hmm.
They even ask personal questions about whatever. And you would think like this is roasting or whatever, but what if that person doesn't agree?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things.
Because if I do have a good sense of humor, but if somebody would touch a really sensitive subject of mine, right, I would not feel good about it. A specific case was this person in the audience, because now I remember the story. She had cancer, terminal cancer, and this guy on stage was making fun of her that she's gonna die soon.
Mm-hmm.
It feels harsh. She was fine with it, luckily. She responded well, but you don't know how that comes across,
Yeah, and
on social media. Everybody on social... In the end, what he did, he invited the person on stage and he started kind of like congratulating her, whatever. And he made it, in the end, was a nice moment. But if you take that portion out of context and you put it online as a reel or whatever, that can create an issue.
That can. And the problem is, if someone's taken someone else's, so they've taken that
out of
reel
context,
and they've taken it out of context, they've produced it themselves. So they've taken a copy of what he's put up, and then they've taken a copy of that and they've taken it out of context and put it up to get a reaction. He could go and sue them for defamation of character because they've taken something out of context, and it can make him look in the bad light because they've taken it out of context and they've used it for their own gain on it.
Yep.
Which, you would say, oh, well, most people would go and look it up, but a lot of people wouldn't, and they would make a judgment call from that one video.
Yeah. Which
then changes, it's a problem to that comedian. It would make them think, oh, he's not a nice guy. And it would change their whole perception of that one person, which is then defamation of character. Because, you've released something that isn't wholly true. Yes, it's a true part of the video, but it is taken out of context and you haven't seen the whole thing through to say, oh, well, it started off that way, but it turned into something nice, So you've really got to watch with a lot of how people edit and produce those things.
That's also with the AI as well, which is quite strange. Like you could take someone else's voice, create whatever you want with that. So for example, if I would post my voice in RAW online somewhere, or I have a solo podcast, just talking by myself in the camera, somebody can take my audio, right? Yep. They can put it into a tool, and then they can generate my voice, and they can use my voice to say certain things that I never said. And this starts to happen with video now as well. You could still say that, oh, this is AI generated, I can figure that out. However, with the voice, it starts to become harder and harder to distinguish what's real and what's not.
Yeah. So AI, there's a lot of rules that are starting to form around AI. Quality industry, GDPR as well is coming in with AI rights and regulations as well. The quality industry is trying to amend and update its documentation and its standards for covering AI as well, because you have to fact check what AI produces. Defamation and copyright law are trying to catch up, but the technology is changing so fast at the moment. You need agreements. You should put out and request agreements to say, I'm going to use your voice for this AI to then regenerate your voice for production. But they should then state that this is an AI generated voice. This is not
real,
the original Bratis voice, you know? So that is what they should do. But at the moment, it is a bit of a gray area that is under review. I hate
gray areas.
Yeah, it is under review, and they are trying, like I say, they are trying to catch up with the technology, but technology is still moving on much faster than the legislation can keep up with at the moment. And it is something that is causing a few issues out in the wider world. You know, where's everyone's stance on AI generated images or music?
Yeah.
You know,
they take the data from all over the internet, right?
Yeah.
And I never agree to that. That happens. So if I write in ChatGPT, let's say something, it could spill out some ideas from my blog that I wrote. And I never agree to that.
Yeah.
Right. So what's kind of like the take in there, you know?
As it stands at the moment, anything that is produced by AI is not really subject to copyright or trademark law, because no one has specifically made it.
Yeah, it's AI is not a person.
AI is not a person. There was a very famous one where an artist won a competition, but he didn't receive the credit for it because it was an AI-generated image.
There you go.
Now, the argument was the AI couldn't have produced the image without the artist's input. But it was still the AI that generated the image.
Of course. It's like, let's say, one painter, one guy that paints pictures and things like that. And then we've got the manager. And he says, you do that.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that you created it.
No.
Yeah, it's the painter that made it, right? The entire thing, or a musician, whatever. You're a manager of a band, and you tell the band, look, guys, you need to create this piece of music that's going to sound in the style of that, and I need guitars, I need drums, or whatever. Go and do it.
Yeah.
The person that it dictates the way the band needs to look and feel and everything. He
for want of a better
touch
thing,
anything.
He's the quality checker.
He's the quality checker. Yeah, that's it. He's not a creator.
He's not
just
a creator.
saying, like, look. But then the musicians, they start going and start like creating all these beautiful melodies, and producers like start creating like the entire production. And these are the people that get the rights. AI is the creator per se, if that makes sense. So you can't sue AI.
No. Well, that's it. You can't sue AI. You can't use it for things like.
It's almost like the power of nature.
Yeah, it's a very good tool, and for those people that really know how to use it, it's a very good tool. But I think it can cause people to be a bit lazy in their fact checking.
I totally agree on that.
Because unless you specifically tell it where to look, what sections to look at, you should go and fact check everything, because it picks up everything from
it could be true or could be false. It doesn't matter.
You know, it could go and pick up an article that's on Reddit, on Wikipedia, on, you know, and you're asking it about a government section in legislation, and it would maybe go and find its answer from a completely different source, a completely different country. You've got to make sure you specify what country you're dealing with, you know, because it works across the globe.
You're literally building the thinking process of AI by prompting the right questions. The problem with that is, again, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So the AI won't tell you.
No.
Not, at least if you don't ask. Okay. So it's quite difficult. And there were so many people saying like AI could replace lawyers tomorrow, could replace musicians or podcasters. It doesn't work like that.
it doesn't have the experience. It has all the knowledge, but unfortunately it has too much because it picks it up from non-reputable sources, shall we say, or non-legislative sources. So it will have all the knowledge, it can spit you out.
And there is this argument where AI is taking the information that's created by real people, right? But it also takes information created by AI.
Yeah.
Right? So bad information gets fed
back into
the system. So it can poison itself.
Yeah.
Over time. And that's what I'm thinking the problem with AI is. And I use AI on a daily basis. I'm not going to lie, but I use it like specifically for like brainstorming ideas, just to kind of like spark ideas into my mind, not really to create something with AI per se. And if I do create generate something with AI, I'm going to change the heck out of it because I may not agree with what has been created.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, a lot of people in my industry, one of the things that I find a lot of them use it for, and you can tell when they use it because it starts off with the same phrase.
Yeah.
Is emails.
Mm-hmm.
Emails. A lot of people find emails quite difficult to write. I don't know why.
Oh, man, I write emails every day. And to be honest, I don't care how I write them. As long as I write them and I put everything into that email that I think it's useful. It has maybe one grammar mistake. It may have, let's say, a bit of the structure is not that good. At the end of the day, especially if you're cold emailing people, for example, if you do something like that, genuine people, people want to talk to genuine people, especially in this day and age where everything feels like so sterile,
Because it's sort of the fallout of COVID is that, everyone's still working remotely. So you're very instantly, you like to sort of sit at home and not really talk to people face to face. But I think for a lot of them, it's doing this, using AI for their emails. It always starts off, I hope this email finds you well. And that's fine. I always remember that from English, writing letters and things like this. I know that sounds like I'm really old. But, doing this, it can help. It helps as a very good prompt as to how you might want to put your email down. If you brainstorm, I've got this email to write, I've got to put these parts to it. Help me generate this email. It'll help you with the structure if you struggle with that. Once you get to a certain level in your professional careers, in your business industry, it becomes a lot easier to write these documents. And all it does for you is maybe time save. So as it'll generate the email for you on your behalf because you've got, okay, I'm writing this email, it's got to say this. But at what point do you go, it's taking me longer to put the prompts in?
That happens in everything. Even in editing, they say you can use AI for editing your podcast, and you use AI and then you realize that you need to correct everything. And by the time you go through everything, you realize that you spend the same amount of time or maybe even more correcting what AI did wrong.
Yeah.
Let's go really quickly into a small game. Now I'm going to ask you to pick two of those questions from there. They are not related to your industry.
Yep.
And surely I want you to answer two of these questions.
Okay. Let's have a look. Let's go with the first one. What's this one?
Hopefully it's going to be something different than the last guess. So let's see.
What's the strangest thing you've ever Googled?
Okay, we're going to have another one because this one was answered by another guest.
Okay, let's go to the bottom.
Yeah, I want to get some because I know there's some nice questions in there.
If you had a time machine,
I love that,
but could only use it once, would you go to the past or the future, and why? I suppose most people would say I go to the past and I'd win the lottery.
There you go. But wouldn't you be curious what's happening?
Well, that's the thing. I think for me, I wouldn't actually mind going to the future. Growing up, 80s kid, 80s child, Back to the Future.
I've seen the movie.
Love that movie. I'd love to see where technology takes us. I'd love to see whether we've, where the industries of the world takes us, whether we've messed the planet up so much that we actually have to fly off into space and try and find somewhere else, or just how we would go and change the world and change technology. I mean, there's a lot of things out there's a lot of really cool ideas out there at the moment with the energy saving industries, lithium batteries. They've got a finite amount, but there's got to be a stopgap between what is the next newest renewable energy and what we currently use. And at the moment, that's going to be lithium, potentially going to be the lithium battery. And that is, that's one potential source. But I want to know what that next energy source was going to be. There is so many more things that we can do with technology if certain legislation, certain limitations, certain ways in which we're allowed to access that technology is removed, and it becomes a bit more accessible to industries and companies and things into the market. That I think it could really change and develop the world in many different ways.
I think one of the things that I would do, I mean, there's many answers I could give to this question, but one thing that I would like to do, and I think that's gonna change your life forever, is go in the future. And I know there's this paradox where you can't meet yourself in the future because you disappeared. But let's say if I could meet myself when I'm older, 60, let's say. And first thing first, I want to see myself if I'm okay, right? Because if I'm okay, then that means that I don't need to worry about it anymore as much. So
Take
an accident won't happen to me. Who knows where I live? I'll just feel like I'm not going to worry anymore. I'm just going to feel like whatever's going to happen is going to happen in my best interest. And that's one thing. And then I'll ask myself a few questions to make sure that whatever I do, with my life is going to be meaningful, and I'm not going to spend time on something that I shouldn't.
A bit of self-advice.
Self-advice, yeah. Because that's something that, because you could say that I'll go in my past and then tell my past self what you need to take care of. But why not taking the opportunity to go ahead and make sure that you get advice about what you need to do, and forward, you should be fine. Let's go to the next question.
Okay, what's this one? If aliens landed tomorrow and asked you to show them one thing to represent humanity, what would you pick? Wow,
I like that.
That's a difficult question, isn't it?
I've got a few answers to this.
Yeah, because humanity, obviously, it's got a few different faces. You'd like to present the best one that you could. You could, show them the feats that of industries we've created, the likes of the Eiffel Tower and the, those kinds of things that have kind of represented humanity in terms of how we've developed, how we're able to engineer something. You look at the likes of the Roman Colosseum, that's probably got quite a few facets to humanity. Look how it's stood so many hundreds of years of time, but look at the reason why it was built. That in itself is going to tell quite a lot about
our species and stuff.
Our species and how we've hopefully moved on somewhat to
not fighting anymore gladiators.
Yeah, not gladiatorial fighting for entertainment, although you say that, but we've got sports, boxing,
but
we've got MMA.
All good and fun.
It's all good and regulated to certain degrees as well. Equally, you could show them technology.
I was thinking about that. Maybe one answer to this question would be to show them the library of Wikipedia.
Yeah,
because they can see everything there.
That in itself, it shows us at our best and at our worst.
Yeah, it shows everything. Another answer to this would be, have you heard of the Voyager spacecraft?
Yeah.
So Voyager 1 and 2, both of them have a golden disc on them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think they have a copy of that here.
Mm-hmm.
The golden disc has all the languages of all the nations in the world. They have a few songs there, like great songs from that time, from the 70s, 60s, and I think even older than that, so before the 70s. And then they've got images of Earth and everything, and you can give them a golden disc.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I quite like that answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a good one.
I actually didn't think about this, but I just came into my mind now. But I know that this one actually is out into space, outside our solar system already.
Yeah,
heading to certain stars, and you never know. In this huge universe, maybe someday will be picked up by other
life forms,
which I believe they definitely exist. And maybe this podcast will be captured via radio waves. You never know.
You never know. You never know.
And we're gonna get like policies and processes and stuff like that. What are these guys talking about? You don't know that you have like AI to solve it for you all? No. We are at the end of the episode, so I'm just going to ask you, where can people find you to learn more about what you do, maybe contact you for certain services, consultations and stuff like that. So you're based in Hamilton, but I guess you would work remotely with other people as well.
Yeah, so like I say, I've worked with a few people around the world as well on different legislation and that ISO standards global. But yeah, so you can find me in Hamilton. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name, Adam Morgan, and you'll find a picture of me. My company is Gia Consulting Ltd.
We'll have that in the show notes so people can go straight there.
Yeah, I'll pop a link to my website. It is under updates at the moment. So it's going under a bit of a rebranding.
All the information in there.
It's got all the different services I offer and different things as to ways in which I can help. That's kind of who I am and where I come from, kind of thing. That's my company, Gia Consulting Ltd. Anyone ever wonders why Gaia? It's because I started out in geotechnics and Gaia being the Mother Earth.
I love that.
That's kind of where I started, and that's why I called my company what I did.
I like that.
So yeah, that was it.
Great, Adam. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. It was a really, really nice chat. So I'm sure that the audience will get loads of takeaways from this episode. You guys, if you want to support the podcast, you can do a few things. First thing first, you can subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to the podcast. You can review the podcast on Apple Podcasts as well. It really helps when you review a podcast because every review shows Apple that you really like this podcast and they're going to push it up, of course. Same happens with the subscribe on YouTube as well. And then obviously share it with anybody that may be interested in anything business related, especially in the creative space. We will have guests on all sorts of topics. So last time we've got somebody, Craig, that was talking about marketing and all that. And today we got Adam, and we're going to have book authors. We're going to have copywriters, graphic designers, musicians, podcasters, whatever. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.